So here's the thing. It is currently about 80 degrees inside of the cabin, about 100 outside. My air conditioner is barely doing anything to keep me cool in here, so you're just gonna have to deal with a red strongman throughout most of this video. Sorry about that. Hey, I always said I wasn't cool. Here's another thing. Back in May, I made a video on the gaming website Blistered Thumbs, going over how much of an absolute disaster it was, and all the usual nonsense that comes from internet wackiness. However, in the comments of that video, there was one name that kept popping up that intrigued me. Stuttering Craig. What, the gay kids from South Park? No. As I would come to soon find, Stuttering Craig was the co-founder of early internet megasite Screw Attack, a name I haven't heard of in a long time. In fact, I've almost never heard of it. See, while I'm obviously aware of Screw Attack's existence, I never really used it back when it was still around. The only time I can think of was when the AVGN made his hentai games video and I had to go on Screw Attack to watch it. By the way, a little qualifier there, when it was still around, will probably give you a bit of a hint as to where this story goes. Still, I'm not exactly sure why people want me to look into him, so I guess let's start by just doing a little surface level research, alright?
Later.
Oh, okay, that explains it. The story of Stuttering Craig, real name Craig Skistimus, which sounds like a fake holiday, is a fascinating story of how someone who had it all ruined it for not just himself, but everyone else, purely out of ego and spite. Allegedly. This guy made a single good move that could have theoretically carried him off into the sunset, but he ended up fumbling it so hard that now he's just a regular-ass small YouTuber, which, like, okay, that's still pretty good, but like, he's doing about as same as me right now, and that's quite the fall, alright? Frankly, I had my work cut out for me, as a lot of this story actually isn't that easy to find. Weirdly enough, a lot of Screw Attack's history just isn't well documented, outside of dubious fan wikis with few sources and sometimes conflicting information. Screw Attack doesn't even have a Wikipedia page, and I don't even know how that's possible. This was a massive website for its time that jump-started the careers of people who would go on to be influential names to this day. Channel Awesome has its own Wikipedia page, but somehow this doesn't. So you better appreciate the work I put into this shit, buckaroo. Well, no matter how influential it was, the website is gone now, which just begs the question, how did this happen? What caused all of this? And why the fuck is Brental Floss involved? All this and more will be revealed as we look into the story of Stuttering Craig. This shit goes back, way back, to February 15th, 2006. Two friends, Craig Skidimus and Thomas Hanley Jr., decided to do something that was pretty novel at the time. Start a podcast about video games. Look, I know nowadays dudes talking about video games is the most popular thing you can find on the internet, but this was 2006, back when video games were still kind of a niche hobby. Well, as niche as a multi-billion-dollar industry could possibly be. Look, it was a different time, okay? Video games were either for children, virgins, or drunken frat boys. Look, point is, at the time, this was a novel idea, and because of that, the show began to grow very quickly. The podcast would be called the Side Scrollers Podcast. The podcast was pretty well put together for its time, and from what I heard, the two hosts did have good chemistry with one another, so I can see why it caught on.
Dance Dance Revolution, a game that has changed a lot of people's lives, and now West Virginia is talking about putting it in the school systems.
So is this going to be like the Subway guy? You know, Konami's going to come in there with the fat guy and then show a picture of him 10 minutes later after playing DDR? Magically appears 8 times skinnier?
When I was 13, I weighed 250 pounds, but now that I'm 18, I weigh 150 pounds. Thanks, DDR.
Yeah, maybe they're going to be like that dude with like one leg.
Yeah, the dude dancing around?
Yeah.
But he's not fat.
Yeah, that's true.
Or obese.
But that's because he played the game.
That's right, because he hops around on his one skinny leg.
For the show, the two hosts adopted the nicknames of Stuttering Craig and Handsome Tom. I have been wondering for years who the fuck this random guy from Kikassia was, and now I finally have my answer. Who would have guessed that the man who triumphantly held the Kikassian flag was the co-founder of ScrewAttack.com? Speaking of, for all of you youngins that haven't caught on yet, this was before Spotify and YouTube. Back in the day, if you wanted to post something on the internet, it'd either have to be a forum post, or you'd have to make your own website for it. That's just how it was. Or I guess use Newgrounds, but I don't think they had podcasts back then, so... Due to the popularity of the podcast, they soon began to add video game-themed videos to the website, which just brought them more attention. These were shows like Video Game Vault, where the two would quickly go over retro video games. And by quickly, I mean quickly. Most of these videos are under a minute long. I will now play the entirety of their video on Dudes with Attitude.
There's a reason why games are rare, and most of the time it's because people didn't buy them. And there's a good reason why people did not buy Dudes with Attitudes for the NES. Look at this. Do we have any idea what's going on? No. We don't even know the goal of the game. We don't know how to stay alive. We don't know why we're bouncing off the walls, but we do know this game sucks!
This truly was a different time. Now, despite how antiquated this may seem nowadays, at the time these videos were popular and brought a lot of attention to Screw Attack. And over the course of about a year, they began to grow. They brought in more talent, upped the production value, and started doing other videos like top 10 lists. However, what truly shot them into the stratosphere was when they obtained the semi-exclusive rights to the angriest gamer you've ever heard of. Yes, the Angry Video Game Nerd was one of the earliest shows on Screw Attack. See, AVGN was massive kind of from the start. However, at the time, there was no way to make money off of YouTube. James started uploading his series in 2006, the partnership program didn't roll out until 2007. But James did have his own website, cinemassacre.com, where he could make money through ads, so Screw Attack reached out with a deal. In exchange for the free publicity of being on their website, to get his website's name out there more, every single episode of the Angry Video Game Nerd, starting with episode 6, would premiere on ScrewAttack.com, before then trickling out onto Cinemassacre and YouTube. See, blistered thumbs? That's how you do it. Needless to say, having one of the biggest names on the internet and arguably one of the most influential creators of all time on the internet exclusively on your website, sorta, would be a massive boost to Screw Attack. Screw Attack would take its mostly final form in 2008, which was a very transformative time for the website. If I had to pinpoint the moment when Screw Attack transitioned from an independent website that hosted other creators to a business, it was March 12th, 2008. On that day, thousands of fans would arrive on ScrewAttack.com to listen to the newest episode of the Side Scrollers podcast, which had been going weekly this entire time, only to realize something is missing. Handsome Tom, one of the founders of the website who had been a part of the podcast since day one, was not here. In his place was Jose Meja, a different content creator for the website. Here it was announced that Handsome Tom would be leaving Screw Attack. The official statement from Craig was that Tom was effectively not pulling his weight.
I want to be upfront and honest with you about why Handsome Tom is no longer with Screw Attack. Now, before I go any further, this was about business. It was not personal at all. I know a lot of you don't think of Screw Attack as a business, but I hate to break the news to you, it is. When Screw Attack started out, Tom and I had this great envision, this thing. Screw Attack was initially supposed to be a partnership. It was supposed to be, Craig and Tom with one goal in mind, doing something that we love and we're all about, video games, and making this thing happen. Tom wanted to be a part of the company, but didn't necessarily know how to contribute in the growth of Screw Attack, where his time was devoted to other things, and things just ultimately, weren't getting done. So as the initial plan was for Screw Attack to be a partnership, as we started to make strides, it was obvious to me and other people involved directly with Screw Attack that it wasn't a partnership from a growth standpoint.
They entered it as a partnership, Tom wasn't treating it as a partnership, so they let him go. Which is fucking hilarious when you realize the actual reason that Tom left. See, going back to 2006 when the website and company Screw Attack first launched, Craig registered it only in his name, not including Tom as a co-founder.
I went and registered the company by myself.
Tom did not know this until Craig suddenly docked his pay, and he couldn't do shit about it. Despite being the co-founder of the website and one half of the duo that started all of this, Craig was legally Tom's boss, not his partner. This all came to a head in 2008 when Tom decided enough was enough and demanded that he gets equal partnership or he walks. Craig held the door open for him. What a fucking cock-nosed son of a bitch. This is some real slimy, backstabbing bullshit. That would probably be the most infamous moment in Screw Attack history if Craig hadn't continued to be a little shit. Yes, at around this time, you could upload your own videos to screwattack.com, and if they were popular enough or high enough quality, they could be featured on the website's front page. Some of the biggest names on this part of the website would even go on to be hired as professional content creators for Screw Attack. And believe it or not, this is where a lot of very popular creators got started, including Pro Jared, who's a story in its own right, and someone who somehow has already come up on this channel before, Peanut Butter Gamer. This guy was on both Blistered Thumbs and the Screw Attack. Add in normal boots, and you just have to ask yourself, why does this guy keep ending up on these failed gaming websites? Other popular creators that had an early affiliation with Screw Attack include Game Theory, The Completionist, Extra Credit, and Brental Floss. This should go to show just how big of a deal this website was back during its golden age. Now, speaking of Brental Floss, there is something I want to clear up. In my research, I found claims that Brental Floss claimed when he started uploading to Screw Attack, he was only getting paid a flat rate of $50 a video. Which, buddy, I make more than that. However, this is an unverified claim, as I can't find any evidence of him actually saying this. Though it's not as if people weren't getting some shitty paint, rascal. No, your big scene's coming later. Go play with your ball I got you from fucking too many games. Hold on. I won this at Dave & Buster's last weekend after 4 drinks and 2 tries, and Rascal fucking loves it. Hey, buddy, stop doing that wire. Go get it. Fuck. He's going. I'm not gonna fuck up the camera to show you, but he looks very cute. Just imagine Rascal holding the ball. What I can verify is that James Rolfe was not paid at all by Screw Attack until 2008. That year, they entered into a partnership with GameTrailers.com, another video game website that was owned by Viacom. Craig would admit this only a couple months ago in April, saying, a little clarification, James was never paid to post on Screw Attack. He first got paid after he signed our deal with Game Trailers. The internet wasn't like it was today. The YouTube partnership program didn't exist in 2006. We had to sell our videos to outlets like a small production company because you literally could make a living creating videos online. It just wasn't a thing. No? Easily disprovable by the fact that James did make a career making videos online at the time. He was doing AVGN full-time before the end of 2006. And I just refuse to believe that a website as big as Screw Attack in 2007 couldn't afford to pay James even that $50 a video nonsense. Cost-cutting measures like this would end up biting them in the ass though, as once YouTube became a viable place for making money, or more money than Screw Attack was offering at least, a lot of their talent shifted over there. Didn't help that along with the money, YouTube also offered more independence and not having to share your paycheck with Craig. So, it was very alluring to people at the time. With the exception of one series. Yes, Death Battle also got its start on Screw Attack. For the unaware, Death Battle is an online animated series where the hosts take 2 fictional characters, usually that have something in common with one another, and just have them beat the shit out of each other. Truly the internet equivalent of just smashing toys together. Oh no, Clo Plune killed Frankenstein, It's pure fan slop, but it's very high quality fan slop made by people that are clearly passionate about it, so in my book that's A-okay. But let me tell you, if you want to see the definition of the humble beginnings, check out their first video, Samus vs. Boba Fett. And then watch, like, Eggman versus Bowser. If that doesn't inspire you to start making art right fucking now, then you just don't have an artist's soul, buddy. I don't know what to tell you. The series was created by Ben Singer for Screw Attack and would go on to be their most popular series, especially once everyone else left. And while I'm sure Ben and his team would have loved to jump ship as well, they couldn't. See, animation is notoriously very hard to make work as a career on YouTube. This is because YouTube rewards people who post frequent, long videos, neither of which is really possible when animating. You can either make short content frequently, or long content that can take weeks, or even months, or even longer. We're still waiting on episode 2 of Gaslight District. This was even worse back in the early 2010s when people first started to filter out of Screw Attack. So unlike everyone else, Ben had to stick with Screw Attack as they were willing to fund the project during the long period of time between episodes, something that he just couldn't get from YouTube. And there Screw Attack was in 2014, already a shell of its former self, purely due to Craig being a little bastard. He scared off all of his talent and failed to give anyone a reason to actually use the website outside of Death Battle, which realistically couldn't have survived anywhere else. A series which, realistically, was also the only thing keeping the lights on at Screw Attack HQ. Bit of a weird symbiotic relationship, but still, it's quite the fall. And this is still just part 1. Oh shit! Look over there! It's Rooster Teeth, come to save the day with the power of corporate conglomerates! Rooster Teeth has an equally extensive history, but all you really need to know right now is that it was a far more successful company than Screw Attack was. All because a couple of guys decided to have an argument while playing Halo. At the time, Rooster Teeth was owned by a company called Fullscreen, which took one look at the sorry state Screw Attack was in and said, "Hey, what the fuck, dude? That's it, you're playing the role of Fullscreen. Get up here. Here, you say the line. Say it. What, no slurs this time? Yeah, here." Keeps tugging at the mic, I think he has something to say. At the time, Rooster Teeth was owned by a company called Fullscreen, and they took one look at the sorry state that Screw Attack was in and said, "Hey buddy, come with us, we'll make things real nice for ya." Purchasing Screw Attack in March of 2014 for an undisclosed amount. Things get a little complicated and businessy here, but Screw Attack and all of its assets were then handed over to Rooster Teeth, and Screw Attack became an extension of the Rooster Teeth company. Screw Attack would basically continue as normal for a while, still making the exact same type of content, the exact same way, especially Death Battle. So there Craig was, a stroke of luck, leading to a very comfortable position, wrapped in the arms of far more successful companies. All he had to do was stay the course, and everything would be fine. And then things get very complicated. This is not helped by the fact that this entire era of the Screw Attack website is wiped and excluded from the Internet Archive. So I have to purely go off of what other people have said. But sometime around late 2016, Screw Attack went from being its own website to a section of roosterteeth.com. Around this same time, Craig started a Twitch channel called Game Attack, which focused on both live streams as well as live podcasts. My point here is that the name is not the only similarity between it and classic Screw Attack. Game Attack was partnered with Rooster Teeth at the time, though. Jumping ahead a few more years, in February of 2019, Rooster Teeth decided that Screw Attack as a whole just wasn't worth it anymore, given the fact that Death Battle was the only popular thing there, and just rebranded the entire branch as just Death Battle, everything else getting thrown away. Then, in May of 2019, Craig and a sizable amount of the Screw Attack team all left Rooster Teeth to make Game Attack a more full-time thing. In this announcement, they would very proudly boast multiple times that Game Attack is now 100% independent. Craig was said to be over the moon with excitement until he wasn't anymore and decided to leave less than a year later. The only announcement of this sudden departure being a Twitch stream, which has not been archived. Right. From what I've been able to gather, the official stance is that he left to get back to his roots and start a podcast, which, as you may recall, Game Attack already did. But still, Craig left in 2020 and would end up starting the Craig Skits podcast in 2021. This would end up screwing over basically everyone who left Rooster Teeth to be on Game Attack, as Craig was the main draw and face of the channel. After he left, things got kinda shaky. They would rebrand to Hang Time, and it's not looking too good. Yeah. Look, that's a story for another day. This whole thing was a rabbit hole I nearly fell down for a few days. One thing that bothered me for a long time was... why? Why would Craig do all of this? Part of it I can understand. Going back to the very beginning of Screw Attack, Craig made it very clear that he was willing to do anything to make sure that he ended up on top. Screwing Tom out of his half of the company, all the scummy money practices, that whole shit. It's not impossible for someone to see the situation that Craig was in with Rooster Teeth, how he slowly had control over his own company, eroded away over the course of years, and come to a conclusion that he just decided, fuck it, I'm going off on my own. And he steps on a rake the second he walks out the door. I think this is supported by the fact that they proudly go on multiple times clarifying that Game Attack is 100% independent from Rooster Teeth. But the next part requires a lot more speculation because why the fuck, after spending so long building up Game Attack, would Craig just decide to leave in less than a year to start a different video game podcast? The only thing that makes any level of sense is that there was some behind-the-scenes drama we just don't know about. Maybe Craig was just pulling another Handsome Tom and trying to take control of this whole thing that's supposed to be a partnership, and they just weren't having it and kicked him out. Which honestly would probably also explain why they completely rebranded as soon as he left. Completely pulled that out of my ass, by the way, pure speculation, but behind-the-scenes drama is really the only thing that I can think of as to why he would leave this passion project so soon after it finally got off the ground. Questions aside, what matters is he left, putting an end to this very complicated chapter of Screw Attack's history. Let's just see where he is now. This is the part of the video that broke me. Craig has gotten into some really wacky shenanigans. Frankly, too many to talk about. This was the part of my research when I just started tumbling down rabbit hole after rabbit hole, finding Dark Side Phil and the Intellivision Amico and all of these other crazy stories that frankly should be their own videos. That wasn't the only reason why this video took longer than normal. There was also my trip to Too Many Games, video on that coming out soon. I had my family visit with my nephew for a couple of days. Hi, Miles. Obviously that took priority. But this tangled web of bullshit that Craig got involved in certainly didn't help. I think as soon as I say hello to my nephew, who's 6 by the way, I immediately start cursing again. Miles, you're too young, you shouldn't be watching this. Go watch Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, that shit's cool. God damn it! At a certain point, I just had to say fuck it and slam the book shut. We're done. I have to stop researching this at some point or this video's never coming out. So I'm going to give a quick overview of where Craig is now and then tell one of these wacky stories before we wrap this bitch up. Craig, after leaving Game Attack, would start his own YouTube channel called the Craig Skits Podcast, later renamed to the Side Scrollers Podcast. It started off with some notable guest stars like James Rolfe in episode 1 and Scott Wozniak in episode 6. Episodes 2 through 5, for some reason, are just completely deleted. Fuck it, whatever, sure thing, Craig, whatever you say. The channel would slowly evolve over time, going from general gaming content to Now, I make it a point not to discuss politics on this channel, unless it relates to a grander point I'm trying to make. Like, with the Dobson video, I talk about his politics only to point out how much of a hypocrite he is. Whether I agree with it or not, doesn't matter, it's just not the type of content I'm trying to make. All this to say, I'm just going to point out that Craig has made it very clear which side he's planting his flag in. This came as a bit of a shock to some people, as Craig was seen as left-leaning before this. Now, I'm not going to immediately shout grifter yet. People's politics change all the time. This was probably a slow and gradual change over the course of years. It's not like he made years of purely gaming content, then did one video about politics that did far better than the others, and immediately started doing only that. Oh wait, that's exactly what happened. What is kind of funny is sometimes he'll do a completely non-political video that's just sandwiched between all of this political bullshit. However, the most interesting story to come from this channel is when Craig went full Derek Savage and decided to host his own awards show. See, Craig believes that the mainstream gaming industry is out of touch with its consumers, and yeah, I agree. Especially given everything that's happening now with Sony and Xbox and all that shit, yeah, I completely agree with him on that. However, Craig decided to take aim at specifically the Game Awards. Deciding that it was too out of touch with what the common man said, Craig would host his own Game Awards, the real Game Awards, where the winner would be chosen by a community vote, putting the power of the awards back where it belongs. In the hands of the people! And all you have to do to take part in this poll is pay $30! Oh, Craig, you little scam. So in order to take part in this vote, that's supposed to... I can't get through this, it's so stupid. In order to get through this... In order to take part in this vote that is supposed to be for the people, for the common man, to make their voices heard and stick it to the elite stuck-up gaming industry, you have to pay a $30 membership. I think the irony here is getting pretty palpable. I decided to watch the most recent Real Game Awards, and boy howdy was it an interesting experience. Firstly, according to the comments, this one was supposed to be like an in-person event, which, it wasn't, which is just funny. But something that I did not expect that made this whole experience even more interesting is that it really did feel like something that was just pulled straight out of early 2000s internet culture. This specific back and forth between these two genuinely feels like something you'd see on TV in like 2007.
Mods are proof that games don't just belong to the studios, they belong to the players, us, who love them. Whether it's mods that make a broken game playable, like in the case of Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, or places like KOTOR 2 where they restore the thing.
Or, you know, you just want to see your Sims naked.
No one really presents themselves like this on the internet anymore, and that made this a bit of a novelty. The first award was for Best Community Mod, which, oh, for fuck's sake. Listen, I love tits too, man, but come on, this is just silly. I'm not much of a modder, but I refuse to believe that there weren't better mods than this. It's a slim margin, shocker, but the Oblivion mod did win out. As for the rest of the event, it was basically an Expedition 33 sweep, much like the fake Game Awards, which is kinda funny. They end up giving their awards to the same people. Also, I would be remiss to not point out the 4-minute interlude where someone plays the Halo theme on piano in a very awkward way. Like, she's not even doing a bad job or anything like that, it's just something about this setup is just inherently funny, I'm sorry. Imagine paying $30 for this, fuck. Imagine paying $150 for this. Oh wait, yeah, right there they say, and attend the Real Game Awards in the near future. You can't attend it, it's just a video, you fucking scam artists. Hang on a second here, I'm just realizing something now. Okay, so they say in the 1337 sponsorship, the elite sponsorship, so just nominate, vote, and you are listed as the sponsor of the Real Game Awards, right? I'm looking at the video right now. At the very end, it says, thank you to our voting members, those in attendance in Dallas, and the 1337 sponsors for making this show possible. First of all, what do you mean in attendance in Dallas? This was not a thing. This was just a bunch of videos. VTubers are present. What are you talking about? Secondly, no one is listed as a 1337, so either no one actually bought that or they just also got scammed. Jesus Christ, this is what I mean. This shit just keeps piling on top of itself. This is insane. I feel like this is a good spot to leave Craig, as this did happen only a couple of months ago. This is just what he's doing now, uploading podcast clips daily and doing shady stuff like this. A far cry from where he once was. Something interesting I noticed that I've been sprinkling through this video for those who've been paying attention is that it feels like Craig never really changed his content over the years. Well, okay, outside of very recently, but even then, like I said, certain things he's doing now still feels like something plucked straight out of early 2000s gaming culture. Throughout ScrewAttack's entire life, Craig kept doing the same thing, with the same production value and presentation that you'd see in 2008. The team that sets the studios for internet things to say, hey look, we're just as professional as regular television. The sort of stuff that you only really saw back in the day. In a sense, it was pretty nostalgic seeing all of it, but at the same time, it's also undeniable that internet culture has moved away from all of that. These big video productions just aren't as popular as something a lot more humble. People prefer individual creators with personality to a team of creators that all kind of just homogenize together and don't really stand out from one another. While Craig's recent output is more in line with what people typically look for from an internet personality, I can't help but wonder if ScrewAttack's inability to evolve with the times may have led to its growing irrelevancy until nowadays when it's completely irrelevant. But then again, I wonder how would you adapt something like ScrewAttack to the modern day when its entire concept is starting to seem outdated? The idea of a website all about video game articles, lists, and reviews is kind of starting to go out of style. Again, people prefer individual takes on the internet. Just look at places like Polygon and Kotaku, which are routinely mocked and made fun of and generally considered products of an older time. To be fair, ScrewAttack did allow people to upload content to their website, but once most of the talent left, so too did any incentive to actually upload there. What's the point if people are literally only going to ScrewAttack.com to watch Death Battle? Not to mention, community submissions got completely filtered out once Rooster Teeth got involved anyways. I think that ScrewAttack's fate was kind of inevitable. Unlike something like Blistered Thumbs, which was a raging inferno that burned out over the course of only a couple of years, ScrewAttack and Craig were a slow simmer that just fell to the ravages of time. I think I kind of lost the metaphor there, but you get the point. Honestly, for as much of a mess as Game Attack was, it was probably the smartest move Craig ever made, moving from the professional video game website to something that feels a lot more individualistic, which again just makes it so baffling he'd shoot it in the foot so soon. Honestly, ScrewAttack and Stuttering Craig both serve as cautionary tales to never get too comfortable when you're working on the internet. Craig got complacent thinking he could just keep screwing over his creators. When the door finally opened on YouTube, everyone fled out, and the website was doomed from that point on. Things change here, very quickly, and you need to be able to adapt when that cultural shift happens, otherwise, you'll be left in the dust. Which is why I'm abandoning this YouTube channel. I'm gonna go start making AI TikTok slop. I'm Sir Strongman, and that was the thing.